Oh my gosh. Okay. Thank you.
Uh, so she was, she is my GP.
Okay.
This was the last visit that I just had. And I honestly thought, I thought the conversation would go so differently. I really did because he's definitely more on the holistic side. Like this was the person during COVID and having autoimmunity. Like she was my saving grace that said, you got to watch your body. You got to do what's best for you. I know people have all different feels about
Mhm.
what to do.
Mhm.
I thought it was going to go so differently. And she literally, when I said to her, she said, okay, so this is a follow up. What are you here for? Started off my frustrations, the menopause, the things. And I said, I just feel like there's got to be another way. I feel like we should have the talk about the hormones. And she's like, absolutely not. Like,
Wow.
like literally, she was
Wow.
like, absolutely not. She goes, you know your circumstances. You know what your body's been through. She's like, do you just want to like tell the cancer to just come on in?
Wow.
And I was like, okay, I don't know what to do with this right now because this was not how this was supposed to go. And then,
Mhm.
ironically enough, she went down the path of it was a lecture. And then, when we were talking about different symptoms, like she did what doctors do. She pulled out all of the and I don't even know. I wrote some of them down. Vioza. She's like, I'll write you a prescription for Vioza. She said, I will write you a prescription for Osfema. I don't know. She went through like a couple things. I wrote them all down. She said, but I'm going to tell you right now, you need to wait until you see your oncologist next week and you need to discuss all of this with her. And I said, well, I already know how she feels. I said I thought we could have a little bit more of an open dialogue as to I didn't even think she was going to be against it. So when she said that, and then I
Right.
said, well, can you tell me
Right.
why you feel so strongly this
O-
way?
Okay. And
It was like she just shut me down, and it was we weren't going to go
no.
near study or that conversation.
Right.
It was all of the risks. It was yeah, yeah, it was a lot to take in. So I'm
It
not
is.
going to lie, my
Yes.
all of it is up again.
Yes.
And then I see my oncologist Thursday. I see her to review the mammogram. So yeah, I'm kind of back where I started with HRT.
It is so unfortunate. And, I just received a message from one of my older, well, she's not that old, but she's in, I think, God, maybe she is 74 already. And she's got osteoporosis. And I did ask her to ask her doctor for at least a low level of a, HRT patch. Doctor totally shut her down. And, it made me think, you're not necessarily going to get anywhere with them at that appointment, right? And you may, I would say at that point in time, it is time to go elsewhere. It just is. And know what you can depend on that doctor for and what you can't if you still choose to be with them because you like them for certain areas and where they're coming from, okay? So I thought about this today when I wrote back to this client and I said, then the next time anyone's in the situation, these are the two questions that I would like them to ask their doctors. One, have they reviewed the statements that have been put out by NAMS, which is North American Menopause Society, over the last 3 years? And it's a very conservative society. Okay, it's conservative. And a lot of doctors go through their training, but they don't endorse compounded creams and things like that. So they're more on the conservative side, okay? But they have issued new statements, okay? So that would be my one question to the doctor. At least it'll get them to start thinking. It might not help you, but at least it will get them to start thinking. The other question that I would have for the doctor is, have they had any specific training at all in with perimenopause and menopause and HRT in the last 5 years? Have they taken any courses, you know, in menopause and perimenopause as it pertains to HRT in the last 5 years? Because if they haven't, they're not up to date. And that just tells you, I can already tell you they haven't. Okay. And I'm not saying, and I'm not talking about going to a lecture. I'm talking about being trained in it, because you can go to lectures and there's still, and I get very angry, bullshit out there when they go to some of their conferences, medical conferences, right? That they're getting, continuing education credit for, that unfortunately you still have that rhetoric out there. So I'm talking about being trained, of course. Okay. So those are the two questions that I think are good to ask your doctor. Um, and just hear what their answer is. And so you have a little bit more information on where they're coming from. Okay.
Yeah.
So Patty, you're
Yes.
joining us, and I had
Yes.
specifically asked, hi, I had specifically asked Stephanie, she had gotten frustrated with her doctor last week, the doctor she trusts very much and really appreciated a lot of the stuff and the way that she has supported Stephanie. I'm putting words in your mouth maybe, but it's kind of the gist that I got. Um, and why, it was so frustrating. And basically because the doctor totally shut her down and wouldn't even have a conversation with her. So it's
Got it.
unfortunate. Yeah, it's really, and it's so funny because once you start following good medical professional people, who are in the know, and a lot of people are following them in social media, um, how many doctors are still, I mean, the large percentage of them are still over here. And by the way, in England, they're so much more far advanced than we are when it comes to hormones. Okay. And, just to let you know, Stephanie, your oncologist is not going to, like you said, you're not going to get anywhere with your oncologist. And for a lot of different reasons, but, and I think I mentioned this before, that, you know, England has such a database because it's social medicine, right? And we do, when it comes to Medicare, Medicare has all this data that they can gather. But prior to that, we're not really on the same system, but England is. And so they are doing a huge study where basically they're collecting data, and it will take at least 5 years. So the thing is that there aren't any great studies on a lot of stuff. Okay. Not since the Women's Health Initiative, because it costs a lot of money. So we're not going to have these randomized clinical trials. No one's going to put up the money for it. Okay. They cost about probably millions of dollars now. And so we have to kind of rely on collecting data and also looking at physicians, the clinical outcomes that they are having. And if they're responsible physicians, listen to them. Okay. Yeah, Christine.
Two things. One, Chris's niece is in med school right now,
Yeah.
and they are in their, uh, female reproduction segment of their studies. They did a 1 hour course on perimenopause and menopause. There's a lecture. It's maybe an hour and a half. And that's their prep in 2025 University of Jefferson Med School.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
she sent us the lecture, and I haven't looked at it yet. But Stephanie, I don't know if you've heard of it, but there's an Instagram. There's a group called Menopause and Cancer Support and Community.
Is that the one by Danny Bennington?
Not sure. It just,
There is a podcast too, and
okay.
it's Danny Bennington's podcast. And I love her.
Well, it might be because
It-
it says the Menopause and Cancer
yes,
podcast too.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Okay.
And it
Okay.
is a great group to follow, except for
They don't,
you do you do still get a lot of the mainstream rhetoric. You get a mix. So it's not bad. You get a mix. I think it's a great support um area to be in. She has gotten a lot of wonderful people that she's interviewed, and there's big ranges. There's big ranges. She did a series back in, it was September of 2024, so about a year ago. And the timing was perfect for me because I all of a sudden had a huge lump on my breast. I was like, what the F is this? So I went through the whole thing, and I really didn't know what it was for like 3 or 4 weeks after they did the biopsy. They did say I didn't have cancer, but they couldn't give me anything. They kept on testing. It's like, what are you guys doing? So anyway, it kind of takes you down that road, and it makes me realize just how vulnerable you feel, a woman feels, or anybody feels when they get any kind of cancer. And so I was grateful for that, actually. And when she did this series, I think she interviewed 3 or 4 different people, and at least 2 or 3 were doctors, and at least 1 or 2 were oncologists. And it was wonderful to get their perspective and what they're up against, as well as oncologists and calling the shot. So I highly recommend looking back at around September, might have been August, but I'm pretty sure it was September. We canceled our trip in 2024. Yeah, it was very
Okay.
good. Yeah. So thank you, Christine. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's really nice to get different resources and, and perspectives as well. Which brings me to, it was a great segue into, your doctor had all of these other drugs, right? To give you for these symptoms. And Christine put across that, I couldn't open it because you have to have a subscription, but it was the headline. So I could go elsewhere to look at what you were talking about. So the FDA just approved another drug to help women with hot flashes and night sweats, and can also help you sleep, partially because of that. And I know in 2023, they also approved a drug as well that's very similar. There are some differences. And, I kind of looked it up, not thorough, not, I didn't go too deep dive into it, but just to see how they work and to see the risks. The one that was approved in 2023, there are some risks as far as liver enzymes are concerned, so you have to watch that. With this one, apparently there isn't that same liver hepatic problem. And this one, I guess, is better with improving sleep. So, and the cost of each, well, they haven't put a cost on this one, but I'm sure it'll be pretty close to the same, is about $6,000 a year. So, these companies are coming up with things, and I am really glad that we do have some of these drugs to help with a woman who, maybe has active cancer, where she probably should be taking any HRT at that point in time, or is going through her treatment as well, and just is not comfortable at all taking HRT, and I totally get that. So it's nice to know that these are here to give a woman, a relief from that. But we will, what estrogen, I know last week I showed kind of the risk, a certain uh, condition. And if we took the drug, what is the risk? And when we take HRT, which is something natural to our body that our bodies have had our whole entire lives, and all we're doing is adding a little bit back in, that's it. Um, just the difference in the outcomes and the risks and benefits. So yeah, yeah. It's frustrating. It's frustrating. There's just so much controversy and misinformation and undereducation of the people that we go to. And thank you, Christine, for sharing that with us. It's just, I know that it's been like that, but I even thought now that there's a little
Right.
bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, I think it was either 625 or 695 for a 30-day supply.
What?
600,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. For
And
30-day
then,
supply. Yeah.
yeah.
Crazy, crazy, crazy. Okay. So, oh, I wanted to ask you, Patty,
Yes.
on your plate. I loved your plate, by the way. Thank you for sharing it. Um, was that potatoes or cauliflower? Just curious.
Potatoes.
Okay, so you guys, I have got the easiest mashed cauliflower recipe on my website. The easiest, okay?
Okay.
So all I do is I take rice cauliflower. I don't even chop up the cauliflower myself. I buy it frozen, Costco, wherever I can get it. It's in my freezer. I pull it out. I steam it up on freaking high heat. And so most of the water goes out. How many of you have an immersion blender? Anyone?
No.
Get an immersion blender. It is one of my biggest favorite tools. I pop that puppy out, pop it in the pan with the cauliflower, add my butter, add my real salt. It's actually called real salt. Put that in there,
Mhm.
whip it up. I am the happiest person in this world. And my sweetheart, who's very picky, I can feed him mashed cauliflower all day long. I serve mashed cauliflower at my Thanksgiving dinners and they still come back. Okay. So
So for me, I just wanted to share that I'm a steak and potato person. So
okay.
for me to have vegetables and fish on my plate,
Uh-huh.
I've come a long way.
Yay.
But
Yay.
I will give that cauliflower stuff a shot. My daughter, she's a massage therapist and physical fitness therapist. She's very into her health, and I will have her cook me up a cauliflower dish, but I
I
don't
love
really
it.
like I don't really like it, so I'll have to try it.
Okay, that's fair. That's all. You know what? Like you tell your kids and your grandkids, it's like, take a bite. If you don't like it, you can spit it out. I don't care.
Yeah.
Just spit it out. Okay, make sure she puts enough butter in it and enough salt in it where it just tastes, you put butter in anything, it just tastes heavenly. Okay.
Okay.
And I'd rather you have a little more fat and a little less carbs. Okay, because that keeps our blood sugar even.
Hmm.
And there's just so many other things. And plus, there's wonderful things with cauliflower. It's part of the cruciferous family, right?
Hmm.
And some of the benefits of cruciferous is it offers a sulfur component of it, and that really helps with the detoxification of our toxins and our hormones. Okay, so that's why we want to sneak those puppies in. Brussels sprouts, cabbage, all of that. Yeah. Okay. But
Okay.
thank you for sharing, and yay, these little
You're
steps, right?
welcome.
Yeah.
Little steps. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, little baby steps. Nothing, Rome wasn't built in a day. These habits are not going to be brought down. I mean, we can maintain stuff for maybe 30 days. And hopefully, we build little patterns and little things and we celebrate each one of them. And, we go back round and round. And each time we go back, we get a little bit farther. Okay. So,
Mhm.
okay. Um, talking about building little things on a consistent basis. So we've got about another 3 weeks. That's it, you guys. And continue to build just little things like I'm going to try this week. Every time I boil water for tea or coffee, I'm going to be doing some of my tricep push-ups from my bench and maybe a couple weight things here just to see what it's like, or even 5 minutes, after you eat, walking around the house or whatever for 5 minutes, or doing squats, something like that. So they're easy little bites, sound bites, and they become a habit. You don't think about it anymore. Okay, I hear planes. Can you hear them? They're flying over the stadium right now.
They're singing the national anthem right now.
Oh,
Are
yeah.
they? Okay, and
I'm
they're
watching Brad Paisley.
Brad
He's a
Beasley, yeah.
country singer.
okay.
Love
All right.
him.
Where do you think Diane is right now?
Well,
At the game?
she's at the
Resort.
resort. No,
Yeah.
you know what, Diane, I'm really impressed with her. She's focusing more on her health than her social life. Because she would have been at the game tonight, but she's having too much fun at the Movera retreat that she's gonna stay there. And I don't know if she'll be back for any of the games.
Okay. All right. Well, good
So
for her. I'm sure she's
yeah,
watching. I'm sure she's
yeah, she's
watching it though.
watching. She's watching somewhere.
Okay. All right. So we are going to be talking about digestion and what happens, as we start moving into menopause. And I know that it's kind of a boutique type of a subject, sort of. I mean, either you feel like you have digestive issues or you don't have digestive issues. But you might find as I go through this that you might find that you're connecting with this because digestion can affect everything in our body in ways that you may not even be thinking about. So I'll be going over some of those. And, Stephanie, you've indicated that you've got digestion is kind of a spot for you. Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Okay. Christine, no. Patty, how,
No.
okay, you're good too. Okay, so bear with me a little bit. I'll try to go through things pretty quickly. Before I do that, I do want to hit on labels for just a second, okay? Because it's such an important thing to talk about. And I don't want to go through this whole course and we don't hit on it. All right. So this is something that I've kind of put together that hopefully will demonstrate how much more important the ingredient label is than the nutrient label. It's not to say that we don't discount the nutrient label. I always look at, serving size, total calories, protein, carbs, sugar. I do look at that. I'm not saying don't look at that. But you really can't determine the quality of the food that you're putting inside your body. And that quality matters just as much, if not more, than the macronutrients that we're always looking at from the label, right? From the nutrient label. So the nutrient label gives us our macronutrients, our protein, our fats, our carbs, our sugars, and the total calories. Basically, it gives us a little bit of minerals in there, sodium, sometimes iron. But basically that's what it's giving us. So this is a really good one. This is taking two different nutrient labels, one from a real maple syrup label and then one from a fake maple syrup like Aunt Jemima, okay? So we've got the calories, and it's for 4 tablespoons. That's what they determined was a serving size. 4 tablespoons is a quarter cup. That's a freaking lot of syrup. Anyway, probably the average person does that. I don't know. Okay, so it basically has the same. You basically cannot tell the difference between the two products based on the nutrient label. They each have 210 calories. They each have basically the same amount of carbs, which all comes from sugar, by the way. So each has about the same 52, 54 here. It's the same. And then it's got sodium, potassium. I basically put 0, 0. I should have zeroed it all out. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so could you pick which one's real and which one's not, just from looking at the nutrients? I would say the answer is no. You could not, right? Okay.
Mm-mm.
All right. So this is what one of them has, and it has maple syrup. That's it. That's it. This one has corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup. And this might be an old label because I don't know if it would list high fructose corn syrup still, but anyway. Water, cellulose gum, caramel color, salt, natural and artificial flavor, sodium benzoate, sorbic acid preservatives, which is both of those are preservatives, and sodium hexametaphosphate, which I don't even know what that is. It might be a preservative too. Okay. Very different what your body has to handle. Okay. And this is across the board. And, corn syrup, GMO, high fructose corn syrup, GMO, natural and artificial flavors, you don't really want that. The preservatives, you don't want that. So when we don't have to have these things, which we don't, okay, we want to eat foods that basically our great grandparents would eat, grandparents and great grandparents would eat. It makes a difference in the load that our body gets. So that's really all I wanted to talk about when it comes to labels. In your course notebook, I do have a list of things that you basically want to avoid. So you could look at that, so you can educate yourself. There is the EWG. Have you guys ever come across that? The Environmental Working Group? Anybody? Yeah, no, okay.
No.
Okay. So what that is it is a group that looks at many, many, many different labels. They're all about protecting the environment and looking at toxicity and levels and things like that. So they have an app. I haven't used it, but I know they have an app where you can even put up a label and they can rate it for you. I think they do that for makeup, they do that for food. So it's a really nice tool. You can go on their website to look at other things too, but it's a really nice tool to help you start recognizing things on your own with the help of that tool. So I would recommend that, the app for that. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to start into the digestion. So just like anything else, maybe not. Can I move this puppy? Maybe not. Okay. All right. So menopause and digestion. So just like anything else with menopause, it affects every single organ and tissue in your body. And the digestive system is no place that it doesn't go untouched either. And for some people, obviously, it's going to be more than other people. People that already have existing problems in their digestive system, it can often be exacerbated by it. And sometimes if you don't have anything, it can still be exacerbated by the loss of the hormones for a lot of different reasons. So why is this so important, right? So everything that happens in your gut doesn't stay there. Okay, it's linked to so many different things, including autoimmunity, by the way, and allergies and eczema. I always go back to the gut when I have somebody that suffers from either one of those. It's something that we need to look at. It might not be the only thing, probably isn't the only thing, but if we have a breach in the gut, we're going to have a breach elsewhere. Okay, skin, mucosa cells are very similar to what we find in the digestive tract. Autoimmune, how could that trigger autoimmunity? Well, if we have inflammation, which a lot of inflammation can come from the digestive tract, that can feed that whole thing with autoimmunity. Of course, I look at diet, look at lifestyle, look at the gut, I look at the oral health too, because that can really drive it as well. So there's a lot of things behind it. So it's just one faction when you're looking at allergies, when you're looking at autoimmune. So obvious signs of compromised digestive tract, right? So heartburn, reflux, obvious sign of you're not working that great. Stomach distension, bloating after eating, upper abdominal pain, stinky farts and poops, indigestion, belching, pain, ulcers, constipation, diarrhea, which has the medical name of IBS, nausea, halitosis, bad breath, undigested food in the stools, food sensitivities, and then colitis and Crohn's, which are actually both considered by some autoimmune responses, okay, to something going on. So those are the obvious signs associated with, or signs associated with obvious digestive stress. These are secondary. So eczema, allergies, fatigue, for a lot of different reasons, low levels of B vitamins and minerals. And we'll go into what's happening in each part of the digestive tract to understand this. Yeast infections. Okay, so we think of a vaginal yeast infection coming from the vagina, right? It's not being done by anything else, but we usually see yeast infections when we're taking an antibiotic. Okay, well, that antibiotic's going in our gut, it's not going into our vagina. Okay, but yet the yeast infection shows up there. So we can have yeast infections that stem systemically or showing up in the vaginal area. Urinary tract infections can also be an issue here, often associated with yeast. So if you have repeated either one of those, I want to fix your digestion. Depression, anxiety, a lot of people don't realize that a large portion of our serotonin is made in our gut. Elevated C-reactive protein, we can see that as a result of it because again, we have, depending on the amount of inflammation that's happening, we can have hormonal imbalances, not so much during menopause, but during our fertile years. We can have migraines, thyroid issues, again, more with autoimmunity, but there is some thyroid processes going on in the digestive system as well. We can have increased ADD and OCD as well because of what's happening in the digestive system, fibromyalgia, brain fog, and I've already mentioned autoimmune disease many times. So RA and Hashimoto's are a big one. So our digestive system is one long tube, and it actually starts in your mouth and it ends in your rectum or your anus. And there's a lot that's going on specifically in each area here. There are three different organs that support the digestive system. One is our liver, the other is our gallbladder, and the other is the pancreas. I think with the pancreas, most people think that that's where, all it does is basically produce insulin, and it is true, it does produce insulin. But there's another part of the pancreas that produces digestive enzymes, which is very much needed in order for us to digest our food. The liver, I'll go into that in a minute, and the gallbladder basically houses what the liver makes. So it's basically bile. Okay, so in our mouth, that's, well, I would argue that digestion actually starts with our eyes and our nose because when we smell something wonderful or if we see something wonderful, it can start at salivating, right? It can start at digestive juices in the mouth as well as the stomach. So um, the mouth, what happens is we've got our saliva, and there is an enzyme amylase which starts to work on carbohydrates, and then we also chew. So digestion starts in the mouth, and then that food, that bolus, goes down the esophagus to the esophageal sphincter. Okay, and then the sphincter opens, the food goes into the stomach, and then the stomach does its thing. A lot of important things happen in the stomach. So one of the things that can lower in menopause is stomach acid. And stomach acid is super duper important because it does a variety of things. I only have three of them listed here, but I'll add my fourth. It's responsible for cleaving and breaking apart and making available our B vitamins. So we're talking folate, B6, B12, all of that. And those are really important for that methylation. I mentioned that before, and methylation is part of detoxification, moving out hormones, toxins, really important for that, for brain health, for heart health, for energy, for nerve conduction. These are all very, very important. And, we see people as they get older, get dementia, right? And we need that B12 to help with that brain health. We need our B vitamins to help with the brain health. And as we don't produce as much stomach acid, or let's say that esophageal sphincter starts to relax, doesn't work as well, because again, we've got estrogen. And remember, estrogen is really important for the integrity of our tissue and for our sphincters, for our ligaments, all of that. Okay. So if we're dropping in estrogen, it could affect our sphincter muscle. It can affect our production of stomach acid. So we might have more acid reflux. And then if we have acid reflux, we're taking something to reduce our stomach acid, and this whole vicious cycle happens in an older person, where they're not getting the nutrients they need. So in addition to making available our B vitamins, hydrochloric acid or stomach acid is also important for breaking down our protein and breaking them into smaller pieces, the amino acids. And if we don't do that, it's going to sit in our stomach for kind of a long time. It's going to putrefy. The whole motility of our digestive system slows down. It's not a pretty picture. It also sterilizes our food, and that's important because we do get buggies coming in with our food all the time, but usually our stomach acid kills it. The other thing it should be up here is it also makes our minerals available. So our iron, our potassium, our magnesium, our sodium, our calcium, all of these things are super, zinc, okay, and selenium. All of these things are super important for many different functions in our bodies. And if we don't have enough hydrochloric acid, all of these the availability of these can go down. Okay. So that's basically what's happening in your stomach. No small feat here is going on. And one of the things that I see if, you know, a woman going into perimenopause or menopause, if she's already had issues and if there's stress, there's all sorts of things. One of the signs of low stomach acid would be getting bloated right after you eat. You can get bloated throughout the day. You can get bloated a little bit later, but if you get bloated right after you eat, that's a really good sign that you have low stomach acid for one reason or another, and we need to investigate that. It could be because of a bug called H. pylori. It could be stress. It could be stomach lining that has become irritated. It could be a lot of different things, but we need to figure that out. Another thing is to look at things like minerals and your B vitamin status. Okay, that would be another thing to do, but pretty obvious would be a bloat right after you eat. If you have questions, put it in the chat box because I'm just going to fly through this. Okay, it's just a lot to talk about. Okay, then after it's done in the stomach, it goes into the small and large intestine. So what's happening in the small intestine? We have a lot more digestion going on, and then we have the absorption of all of those nutrients. That's where it happens. There's a lot happening in the small intestine. And this is where we can see something called SIBO or small intestinal bowel overgrowth and IBS. So let's talk about small intestinal bowel overgrowth for a moment. That can go up again. I mean, it can happen anytime, but the propensity can go up as we move into menopause, perimenopause, because two things. One is, let's say our HCl goes down and we get a stomach bug or something like that. We can be more vulnerable to getting SIBO after that. It just affects the whole thing. Some people more than others. The other thing is, I talk about sphincters, right? Those are important. We don't just have a sphincter at the end of our digestive system. We have sphincters throughout the digestive system to allow things to come in and then not to have things back up. All right. So we have a sphincter between the small intestine and large intestine. And again, the integrity can be compromised once we lose our estrogen. So sometimes the bacteria that's supposed to be mainly in our large intestine can creep back up into the small intestine. And all of a sudden we have these little buggies, okay? This bacteria that's not supposed to be there in the small intestine. And the problem with that is that when we eat, those little buggies will feed on what we're feeding it from what we're getting from our diet. And then they emit either methane or hydrogen gas. So we can get a lot of bloating, we can get a lot of gas, we can have IBS. It's not a pretty picture, okay? So in the small intestines, that's where we're going to see the enzymes being produced by the pancreas. We're also going to be seeing the bile that was produced in your liver go into your gallbladder, stored in the gallbladder, and then when it's needed, it goes into the top of the small intestine. And the functions of that, again, would be to sterilize your food. So there's more sterilization going on there. Bile also emulsifies our fat, so it can help break it down and it helps us utilize it. If we are not creating enough bile, and I'll talk about that in a minute of how estrogen can affect that, and in moving the bile, making it and moving it, we can become vitamin deficient of fat-soluble vitamins, so vitamin A, vitamin E, vitamin D, K, what else is there? Omegas, might have a difficult time with that too, okay? So that can be compromised. Bile also, not only does it sterilize, it's escorting our toxins out of our liver, right? So it's made liver combines with their toxins and it's escorting everything out. We're hoping it does. All right. So that's an important piece of it as well. And then once oh, I'm not ready to go large intestine. I thought I was. So the other thing that can happen in the small intestine when we hit menopause, again, it happens with tissue integrity, is that the small intestine is just one cell layer thick. It's strong and mighty, but it's very delicate too at the same time. And if some of that tissue becomes inflamed and that integrity kind of goes away, we don't have that estrogen to support that tissue integrity, we can all of a sudden have what we call leaky gut. So those tight junctions that are so important in the small intestine can start to separate just a little bit. And what happens is minute, tiny little food particles can start leaking out into the rest of the body here. And our bodies are going to look at these as foreign bodies and create an immune response to it. Okay, so all of a sudden autoimmune can go up, but also we all of a sudden we have all these sensitivities to these foods. So, a lot of people ask me about food sensitivity testing, and I'm like, don't waste your money there. There's so many other things I would rather you spend your money on. And one would be a very comprehensive stool test if you have issues with your digestive system. I think it's very valuable. So we're not guessing, even though I'm pretty well versed in this area. So I can still help a lot of people, but I would love it if a lot of my clients who come in with the digestive issues could do this test. I'd rather them spend money on that. And the thing is if you're already having problems and you come back with a lot of food sensitivities, all that tells me is that we've got a leaky gut, which I probably could have told you anyway, based on your symptoms. Okay. All right. So that's my thought on food testing, food allergy testing. Okay, large intestines, basically what's happening there, we are reabsorbing the water, okay, so making the stools in a formed mass and eliminating waste, and eliminating hormones, enterotoxins, and parasites can reside there, yeast can reside there, bacterial infections can reside there. We really do need to pay attention to our microbiome and making it healthy. Foods can help with that. Probiotics can help with that, prebiotics, fiber, something called butyric acid is you can take that as a supplement. Some people need it, a lot of people don't. And here again, we kind of want to see what you need, what you don't need. Short chain fatty acids. These are all things that are tested in the more functional type of stool testing. And there's two companies I think do a really good job, and one is called GI Maps, and the other one is by Genova Labs, which is the GIFX, which is what I use. So either one of those do a really bang up job and really telling us how your digestive system is functioning and really what we need to pay attention to. Okay. And there's more, our bacteria on our bodies and our digestive system, but on our skin too. We have bacteria on our skin. They rule us. There's much more of them than there is of us. And so their DNA really makes a difference. It's really important. I didn't start this off tonight, but I think I said this in the video that digestion is close to my heart for a lot of different reasons. One is because this is a weak area of mine. And when I went into perimenopause and menopause, it just blew up, and I couldn't get help. I couldn't get any help. So it's really what led me to functional medicine, which is a blessing. It's a total blessing. And, I've been through many years of healing. I've been through different courses, and each time I've done it or learned something, it's gotten me closer. I think if you have issues with digestion, it goes in and out. It's just something, it's kind of a chronic thing, and getting the right tools in your toolbox. I still go through some stuff that's like, really, I have to go back to this again. And it just is. And part of it is stress. Part of it, yeah, it's just one of those things. I mean, I think everyone's got a little something where there's a weak spot, and we can have good times, and then we can have times where it goes, oh, look, I have to pay attention to this again. Just how it is. It keeps us honest, right? Okay. So going back to bile, I just want to talk about this for, you guys here, but if you hear of anybody too that might be all of a sudden having some issues when they do go into menopause, I think is important. So I mentioned our liver makes bile. There's some raw ingredients and materials that our liver requires in order to make the bile. Choline is one of them. Taurine is another. And I was going to quickly look this up before we went on tonight, and I forgot to do it. There's a couple more ingredients that are really important in making bile. And then there is an enzyme also important in putting all this together. And it wasn't until I would say I was probably at least 8 years down the road of being in menopause. I was on HRT, but I was on what they used to do, fairly low dose, number one. Number two, they used to do a biased type of estrogen where it was 80% estriol, which if you guys remember from last week, that's our weakest form of estrogen, and then only 20% of estradiol. So a very weak form and low dose. And so it wasn't really, it was helping me, but it wasn't doing some of the things that I wasn't getting the benefit of just having estradiol in a higher amount. So what was happening for me is what kind of got my attention was my heels all of a sudden started to crack and bleed. And my around the skin around my bed started to crack and bleed. It's like, okay, I can't do dishes or clean the house, darn. And then I lived by the beach at that point in time, and I would go down and the salt water would just kill my legs. Not just when I shaved, it was just like, what is this? And I stumbled upon Dr. Ben Lynch. And if anyone knows him, write it in the chat that you know him. But he is kind of a guru when it comes to genetics. He's out there. He's very passionate about a lot of different things, very strongly opinionated, which I don't think is a bad thing. Sometimes he can go a little off. I'm like, yeah, I'm not right there with you. But I think for the most part, his information is really good. He's brilliant, I think. He's got a supplement line called Seeking Health, which I do use. And I happen was on social media, read or listen, or maybe it was on you. I don't know where it was. Doesn't matter. But something about bile and choline, and he's got a supplement called Bile Nutrients, and it's got all those things that you need in order to make bile. And he also talked about the genetic component of it. And I'd done a genetic testing, I'd run it through a thing. So I knew I could see it. I went, oh my God. I am homozygous, which means I have this genetic SNP from both sides of my family. And what happens is that when you have this SNP, it's harder for your body to make the bile. It has something to do with that enzyme. And when you lose estrogen, it becomes even more difficult. Okay. The largest number of gallbladder removals are in postmenopausal women. There are some also in right after childbirth, like the 3rd or 4th child, maybe, because baby needs choline for their brain. So they will steal it from mama. And if mama's not making enough choline or getting enough choline and making her own bile, okay, it's going to baby. She could possibly have some sticky bile and it gets clogged up in the gallbladder. So all this to say that estrogen does play a part in it, and again, it depends on a person's genetics. I still do take the bile nutrients. I find that I do, even though I'm on a much higher dose of estradiol, it's still not the same as what I would find if I was in my fertile years. So that's how important bile, the liver, and the gallbladder is. And some people more important than others. And, I get asked, do we need to do genetic testing? And I don't, here again, that wouldn't be the first thing that I would do or reach for. If you want to spend your money in other places, I'd rather spend it in, the oats test. I may have already said this last week. I think I did. It kind of sounds like a repeat to me, but I'm going to repeat it anyway. I'd rather see what your body's actually doing with things now based on your current diet and your current lifestyle, because we can turn on and off these genes. We are not our genes. our vulnerability and our susceptibilities are pointed out by our genes, are directed by it, okay, when our body goes off balance. And by the way, I look at my family history. My mom had her gallbladder removed. I look at my couple of members in the family, they all indicate that they have issues as far as absorbing the fat soluble vitamins, things like that. So if I look at a family history and even my own, mine was basically constipation is where I had the issue before I went into menopause. These all can indicate, issues with bile. Okay, the gut's biggest enemies, we're almost there, is bad irritating food. So the processed, fiberless, chemically processed, sugar-laden, gluten, artificial sweeteners, GMOs. We'll be talking more about GMOs next week. Very important. And all this translates into the SAD diet or the standard American diet. So that's a big enemy. Antibiotics, they kill off our good bacteria. That opens us up for a whole, our bacteria, they need to balance each other. I'm not always about killing the bad bacteria. I'm more about balancing it out. Medications, people don't think about this. Even oral progesterone can change. Oh, that's what I wanted to talk about. We'll see how much time we have. Something came on my radar from Dr. Felice Gersh, and I've mentioned her before. I thought that was really interesting. But anyway, oral progesterone can, for some people, be an issue. Be an issue and cause problems. Birth control can also be an issue for some people and cause problem when it comes to microbiome and how the digestive system works. Steroids, so oral steroids, if you take one every once in a while, 3 or 4 times during your lifetime, you're going to be fine with that. But it can alter things, and we might need to put things back on track. Things like acid blockers can be an issue, right, for the gut. I already mentioned why. Ibuprofen can be an issue. Again, that's that stomach lining, and the liver as well. Benadryl, which is like a steroid, okay, it squashes things there. Aspirin, including baby aspirin, can change that stomach lining and can start that whole process, downward spiral from the not having enough stomach acid. Bisphosphonates, so those are the medications, the main medications that most doctors reach for when it comes to bone loss. So they can be a big issue for many people, for many women, on the digestive system. So, these are all the things we don't think about as far as medications having a role in it. Food allergies, the biggest ones would be gluten and dairy, and for some people also soy. That's what I run into the biggest with people. So if you're wondering if you have, big food allergies, some eggs is another one, sorry. Eggs, soy, dairy, and gluten are probably the 4 biggest offenders. So if you're wondering about that, I'm not so concerned about all these other things, but I might want to pull those 4 out for like 14 days, let your body settle down, and then maybe put 1 in at a time and see what your body does with it to see if in fact you do have an allergy with it, and you may never be able to eat those again or in very minute amounts. We don't know. Okay. And a gluten sensitivity is different from celiac disease, because celiac disease is actually an autoimmune. You cannot tolerate gluten. Gluten sensitivity manifests very, very differently. Okay, it could still be a problem, but it's not going to be the same thing. And you're not going to have what they call gliadin antibodies. Gliadin is gliadin are the proteins that you find in gluten that people are allergic to, that have celiac disease allergies to. Okay, we can have pathogens. Okay, parasites, yeast overgrowth, and pathogenic bacteria are problems. Caffeine and alcohol obviously irritates the stomach lining. Stress can either produce more stomach acid in some people, reduce stomach acid in other people. Cortisol is a problem when it comes to motility, when it comes to the inflammatory markers or the inflammation in the whole digestive system. So, and even the production of stomach acid. So stress is huge. And then the loss of estrogen and progesterone. So tissue integrity and motility, and the vagus nerve too. And that's a whole nother thing, but the vagus nerve is very important when it comes to digestion. And progesterone, I think, well, both of them, progesterone and estrogen, I think help with that tonality of the vagus nerve. Okay, Our gut is responsible for all these things here. The only thing I don't think I've mentioned is it's 90% of our immune system. What else? Well, I think I mentioned everything else here. And, if you're curious, this is a book that I highly recommend. It is written by Julia Enders, and she is delightful. She's funny, she's cute, she knows her stuff, and she just lays it all out there. And then illustrations are made by her sister, Jill Enders. And I'm surprised I don't hear about both of these, or at least her, Julia, more, just because I think she's brilliant in how she puts it all together. Okay. Oh, okay. I'm gonna stop sharing here. All righty. Are there any questions or comments at this point before I'm just going to add one more thing at the end that I think will be interesting for everybody here?
So I just can't wait to do my personal call with you because I'm like a case study for everything you just went over, and it's so sad. I'm not joking. Like,
I know.
yeah,
I know.
antibiotics in me from the time I was little. Paris, I mean, it just, you'll see when we talk, Cindy,
Yeah.
that I'm not surprised I am where I am.
Mhm.
And again, that's the piece of not doing the HRT that concerns me, but yet doing it scares me. So we'll talk
Yeah.
about all that.
Good. Okay. I would
And
love
for
to.
me, I just wanted to share that I don't have gut issues that I'm aware of, but a lot of the secondary symptoms are what I am experiencing. And I'm not a healthy eater, so I'm curious to see how things will change and how I'll feel once
Yeah.
doing better with my
Yes.
nutrients.
Yes. And it's kind of a catch-22 because I know I've been a careful eater kind of because I've had to be, right? And those of us who haven't, because you don't have any overt digestive, it kind of like, I can kind of eat whatever I want in that sense. So it's interesting how things kind of all circle around. But yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what your body does. This will be exciting. It'll be exciting to watch.
One
Yeah.
more thing too.
Yeah.
So plug for our Chris's and the podcast, because what you just taught was a reiteration. So when I listened to the podcast, I was on a walk and I was like, oh, I need to be taking notes. You just went over a lot of what you talked about on the podcast.
Good. I
And then
couldn't
I'll have
remember.
to go back and listen again. No, a lot of this was on that podcast. So for anybody who hasn't listened, listen.
Yeah. And let me say this about Chris and Chris in their podcast. And I love their logo. I just love it.
That's so funny.
I know, but it just speaks to me. I just crack up. Um, and that is, I think you guys are doing a great service. And I think
Thank you.
yeah. And I think you're connecting with a lot of women. And the chemistry between you guys, I've mentioned this before, I think is really good. So it'll be interesting to see where your show goes. Yeah. It'll
Yeah.
be really
No,
interesting.
it's been fun, and the service part of it has been kind of what drove us to do it. Like, we're not alone. Like,
No.
if, and for us to build a community so we don't feel alone either,
Yeah. Yeah. Which is really
Thank you.
fun.
Very nice,
Yes.
Stephanie. The TikTok I did of the cholesterol little reel has over 6,000 views.
Oh my gosh. Yay.
Wow.
Yep.
Yay. See, we
Amazing.
don't know. It's getting out there. We never know what's gonna hit, what's not gonna hit.
Yep.
Okay,
Mhm.
really quickly before Chris has to go.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys know I've talked about Flea Scourge, and you know, she's all about hormones, and she does her homework. She does her homework, and she's been around for a long time. She's probably in her mid-70s now, I'm guessing. And I just mentioned tonight that some women have a difficult time with oral progesterone, okay? And so there are women on transdermal progesterone, and it was interesting, even at the Dutch talk that I went to a couple weeks ago, Mark, God, I can't remember his last name. Anyway, he's one of the head guys at Dutch. He kind of bashed transdermal progesterone. So there is some controversy about that. And again, it doesn't mean that it doesn't work. There just aren't the studies on it. But if you were to look at the women who are taking transdermal progesterone, it is working because it is protecting the uterine lining. The issue is they say it isn't absorbed and it's not protecting the uterine lining. Now, true, the Dutch test and serum does not pick up or transdermal progesterone. It doesn't. So it's hard to measure it. You really can't. And I do recommend that anyone who is on hormone replacement and they are doing transdermal progesterone, not taking it orally, that they do have an ultrasound maybe every year, maybe every other year, depending on what shows up. Okay. So I'm one that really should have one probably every year. And I'm still messing around with my hormones. So it's like I haven't been stable enough to really get it. And so I'm due for one. I am. But anyway, the oral progesterone, and this is great for some women, has to go through the liver. So it goes through this hepatic pass, and then it's turned into something called allopregnanolone, which is great for sleeping. Okay. It's still very good at protecting the uterine lining. It's good for other things too, but the majority of it's turned to something other than progesterone. Is that a good or bad thing? I don't think there's enough studies out there, enough information out there to say it's good or bad. I think oral is still just fine and works great for a lot of women. But she's been doing some studies, and I've been hearing more and more about this, and she actually formally came out with it. Um, at least I'm part of a course I signed up for like a couple of years ago, and she just updated it, and it was about progesterone. You can take your progesterone capsules, okay, your micronized progesterone, and you can insert it vaginally or even rectally, and it will give you the same benefits as far as protecting the uterine lining and absorption as well. Apparently absorbs very well. So that's just a little piece I'm putting out there. Just don't forget about it. You don't have to do anything with it. But I just wanted to let you know that, things are coming out all the time. And I'm grateful for the people that do stay on top of it. I'm grateful to the people who are not afraid of, saying, okay, we might not have the formal studies, but we've seen so many clients that we do have information. We do have data. Okay. So I'm done for the night. Next week it is on environmental toxins. And yeah, I think that's an important piece too. All right, ladies, keep on doing what you're doing. I am enjoying you all again immensely. I love the contributions that everyone's making. Yeah. So enjoy the rest of your
Thank
evening.
you.
You're
Thank you.
Okay, good
welcome.
night.
Okay,
See
good
you. Good night.
night.
Thank
See
you.
you,
Bye.
Steph.